So have you ever wanted to learn a language or framework, but it felt impossible to do without a tutorial? The way that I got over that hump was using the 12-12 process, and essentially it involves very aggressive deadlines. So what sorts of deadlines did I create for this? The first deadline was 1 month. I wanted to make something very dead simple in 1 month. Then after that, I wanted to make another project, a second project, in 2 weeks, another in 1 week, and then a final project in 2 days. Now you'll find that most of the projects were pretty successful, but the last one was an absolute disaster, and I'll definitely get to that later. The first thing I did before even starting on the first project was just getting the Ruby fundamentals down. So I do have about 8 years of experience as a software engineer, but I've never touched Ruby in my life. So you got to give a language the respect it deserves, and you got to go through the docs a bit. You got to learn like the Rails tutorials, any of the Ruby documentation was really helpful. Just getting to know all of those things, making really dumb programs, a lot of hello world type stuff. How do you interact with arrays or strings or any other data types? The type of stuff that usually can transfer between languages. Thankfully, Ruby actually has a lot of fun things and really interesting ideas for especially integers, which just have functions attached to them. Kind of wild, but I like it. Maybe me 5 years ago, I don't think I would have. But anyway, I digress. So, first month after that 1 week period, I created Bloggington. Bloggington was definitely not the best looking, and it was very basic. It was essentially just a blogging app where you can create blog posts, put images in them, and then you can write comments. The comments were not nested because at that time I tried to do it and it was rough. There was definitely some takeaways there. The biggest takeaway for sure was get the crap out first. And what I mean by that is don't expect your first project to be any good. That's just how it's going to be, especially if you're picking up something brand new for the first time. In my case, I was literally picking up an entire language first, and then also Ruby on Rails, which is a framework for that language. So yeah, a lot to take in. So the first month was essentially just getting used to it. And I picked something simple. So I was able to just learn all the things, but use it in a practical sense instead of going to like a tutorial and saying, hey, how do you make a blog in Ruby on Rails? So for the second project, that was Phasmid. That one was more of a bug tracker. And the bug tracker was something that leaned more towards useful for me. I wanted to kind of switch over and say, okay, now that I've made something that's crap and totally fine, I wanted to move to something that was a bit more useful for my use case. Now, in hindsight, I ended up not using it. But my biggest takeaway from that one was I was able to do so much more in half the amount of time like that. It was like magic. It was crazy. I mean, the way the project looked was a lot cleaner. I was able to implement a lot of features like tags and points for bugs. Overall, there was definitely a huge jump. Once I got all the not so straightforward things out of the way, it was very easy to kind of start focusing on just getting things done. So for the 1 week project, that was Evenfall. That was a real-time chat application. And that one was actually the best ratio of challenge and time. The reason for that was I needed to focus it down as much as humanly possible, right? Because you only get a week to do this one. And as a result, you're not going to be able to get the sort of functionality that you want from it. So you got to pick and choose. You can't get all the things done in 1 week. And in my case, I just wanted to keep it simple, just a list of chats, and the chat rooms were all separated out that way. The first day was actually the simplest. I was able to get real-time messaging working just like that. It was really dumb, and the pages just had text on them. You couldn't even see any rhyme or reason to any of it. You could just see that you could write stuff in real time. So that was already out of the way. The hard part was actually learning about stimulus, which essentially made it so that you can do different things with the page and certain interactions. So in the case of like a chat room, you might have a scroll bar that scrolls to the bottom when you first enter, because when you look at the chat, you want it to scroll to the bottom. And then there's also just other bits and pieces you might not think about. Like if you're scrolled up and then somebody posts a message, you don't want it to scroll down. But if you're scrolled all the way to the bottom and then somebody types a message or you type a message, you want it to scroll down. So there was like a lot of edge cases like that actually took a lot of time out of the week to work on it. But you could still get a small MVP of an application out and have it look somewhat decent. So that was a nice little learning experience there, at least. The 2-day project was the disaster. I think going into it, it was tough already. I knew that I needed to just work on it. So right after Evenfall, I went straight to an application I call Sesh, and it was just a workout tracker. That was tough. I barely got much of anything done that weekend, partially because I didn't have the drive to work on something for 24 hours in a very short period of time. So I didn't push myself. And I don't mind that. I think it's good to set limits for yourself. So my big takeaway from that one was definitely don't force yourself to really high standards if you don't need to, right? Overall, you have to accept that there's going to be things that you don't know. And you just got to keep things broken down simple. You know, you can't expect the world of yourself, right? Because then you're going to burn out. You're going to be like, wow, I failed. This sucks. And then what? Like, you know what I mean? It's not sustainable. So that was my big takeaway from the last project. Good news is my last project is actually something I've been working on for the past month and a half now. And I have high hopes for it. You know, I like being able to track my workouts, and yeah, I mean, that's something I'll probably do for another video though. But yeah, hopefully you took something away from this. Honestly, I really enjoyed the process, and if I'm being honest, I think the real process should be the 3-2-1 process if I were to do it all over again. Just a 3-week project, then a 2-week project, then a 1 week. Yeah, the 1 month project was really long, and the 2-day project was way too short. So I think if you want, and plus 3-2-1's kind of a nicer little smoother, you know, whatever. Anyway, that's about it. Thanks for watching.